They said her food could heal the sick, but no one ever asked what she was really cooking. The night hung heavy over the village, thick with mist and silence. Not even the crickets dared to sing. The moon hid its face behind the clouds, as if ashamed to witness what brewed beneath it. From the market's far end, where shadows clung to every wall, a small fire flickered stubborn against the darkness. Its flame danced beneath a large black pot, and beside it stood Adah, the woman whose name had become both blessing and rumor. The air was alive with the scent of her stew, rich, strange, unforgettable. It curled through the village like a spirit searching for open doors. A young man, bold with curiosity and weak with hunger, crept closer. The closer he came, the more his stomach growled, and the louder his heart pounded. He had heard stories that Adah's food could cure fevers, mend broken bones, even soften hard hearts. But he had also heard the whispers that her pot never cooled, that her stew never ran out, and that sometimes her laughter carried voices that were not her own. He crouched low, peering into the shadows. The fire hissed, spitting tiny sparks into the fog. Beneath the pot, the ground shimmered strangely as if something beneath it was breathing. The man frowned, leaning closer. He thought he saw movement in a slow, shifting shape inside the bubbling stew. He blinked, unsure. Then suddenly something moved back, something pale, something with eyes. His scream tore through the night, sharp and desperate. Birds scattered from the trees. Dogs began to howl. And in the glow of the fire, Adah turned her head slowly, her face half hidden by smoke. For a moment her expression was unreadable, calm, almost tender. Then her lips curved into a faint smile. "When the living hunger for secrets," she whispered, "the dead will always answer the call." The fire roared, flaring bright, swallowing her shadow whole. The pot rattled. The air thickened, and then, just as suddenly, everything went silent. In a village where every meal carried a secret, one woman's gift would feed more than hunger, it would feed fear. The mist dissolved. Darkness turned to gold. The sound of drums and laughter filled the air, as the scene shifted to morning, the marketplace alive with color and noise. Women calling out prices, men laughing over roasted corn, children darting between stalls. The smell of pepper, smoke, and spice wrapped around everything. And there, in the center of it all, stood Adah once again, smiling softly, stirring her pot as if nothing had happened. Her stall overflowed with life. Her food glistened beneath the rising sun. No one spoke of the scream from the night before. No one dared to ask what she was really cooking, for every village has its secrets, and some are best left at the bottom of the pot. Before the first cock crowed, before the mist had lifted from the red earth, Adah was already at the market. Her fire crackled softly in the still darkness, and the first breath of dawn carried the scent of her cooking through the sleeping village. It was said that even the wind paused when Adah stirred her pots, as though afraid to interrupt her craft. Her food was more than a meal. It was a spell woven from spice and silence. When her stew boiled, its aroma wrapped around the heart, making strangers forget their sorrow. When she smiled, her eyes shimmered like oil over fire, a calm and deep woman, both familiar and unknowable. By sunrise, the market was alive with noise and laughter. Traders set up their stalls, goats bleated, and children ran barefoot through the dust. But all sounds led to one place, Adah's stall. Her fire never dimmed, her pots never emptied. The sizzle of meat, the bubbling of soup, the soft rhythm of her knife against the board all formed a melody that drew people like bees to honey. The air was thick with rich aromas, roasted peppers, ground crayfish, and something else no one could name, a scent that lingered in the mind long after the taste was gone. "Ah, this woman," the villagers would say. "She must have been born under the star of flavor." Even the chiefs sent their servants early, baskets in hand, to collect their share before others could. Travelers who passed through the village carried her name to distant lands, telling of the woman whose food cured fevers and softened angry hearts. The old lady said her hands were blessed. The young said her charm was danger sweetened by fire. And some whispered that Adah did not cook with spices alone, that perhaps something unseen stirred in her pots. But who would question the woman whose food made the sick well and the sorrowful sing? As the day grew bright, her stall became a feast for the senses. The fire's smoke curled like spirit dancers. The smell of stew clung to the air like perfume. Customers leaned in, eyes half closed, lost in the pleasure of her cooking. Every sound, the splash of ladles, the hiss of oil, the chopping of vegetables carried rhythm like drumming from another world. Whispers rose like steam. Her food gives strength. Her food brings peace. Her food binds you. But such words melted quickly under the taste of her stew. And once you ate, you forgot your doubts. Yet not everyone's heart was filled with praise. Across the market, near the shade of the old mango tree, another pot sat untouched. Mama Uche stood behind it, stirring slowly, her face still and tired. The steam from her soup rose weakly, carrying a scent plain and familiar: yam, pepper, salt, nothing more. Once her stall had been full from sunrise to sunset. Once people laughed beside her pot, calling her the Queen of Stew. But now they passed her by, their eyes fixed on Adah's corner. Her own children ran toward Adah's food each morning, returning home with bowls licked clean and praise on their lips. Her husband, too, came home late, the smell of Adah's spices on his hands. Each day she smiled less. Each night she prayed harder. From her lonely spot, Mama Uche watched the crowd around Adah, the way men stood waiting with coins in hand, the way women copied her recipes but never matched her flavor, the way Adah herself moved, quiet and graceful, like someone listening to a song no one else could hear. There was something unnatural about her calm. Her fire burned without smoke. Her stew never spilled. Even when the market emptied, Adah's pot still bubbled as if it held its own heartbeat. And when dusk came and traders began to pack their goods, Adah did not linger to gossip or count her coins. She covered her pots, gathered her baskets, and vanished down the path before anyone could ask where she went. She appears before sunrise, the villagers whispered, and leaves after sunset, vanishing like smoke. Some claimed she lived near the forest's edge. Others said she had no home at all. Once a young boy tried to follow her after dusk, but he returned pale and trembling. When asked what he saw, he only said, "Her shadow walks before her, not behind." From that day, no one dared to follow again. Still, the mystery only made her more adored. The people said, "She has chosen a gift from her ancestors." But Mama Uche's heart could not rest. She watched Adah's hands move with grace, her smile untouched by sweat or dust, and something inside her began to twist a quiet unease, like smoke curling from a hidden fire. Her thoughts whispered in the rhythm of her stirring, "How can one woman feed an entire village and never tire? What lies beneath the taste that charms the soul?" That evening, as the market faded into twilight, Mama Uche's stall stood empty once more. Her untouched pots reflected the last flicker of light. She looked toward Adah's corner, empty now too, and a chill ran through her. The ground where Adah had stood was wet, though no rain had fallen. She reached out and touched it. The soil was as cold as river stone. For a moment she thought she heard something, a faint hum, low and steady like a whisper beneath the earth. She stepped back quickly, her breath caught in her chest. "It's nothing," she told herself, "just the wind." But that night, as she lay awake listening to the crickets and the creak of her roof, the question would not leave her mind: who is Adah, really? And as the moon climbed over the silent huts, its pale light fell on her restless face, a face that would soon learn that not all gifts are blessings, and not all hunger is for food. The sun fell like an ember behind the hills, painting the village in gold and sorrow. Smoke from the evening fires curled into the darkening sky as the women stirred their pots, preparing supper for their families. But in one small hut near the end of the marketplace, silence ruled. Mama Uche stood before her pot of yam stew, watching it bubble, her face reflected faintly in the oily surface. Her hands trembled as she lifted the ladle, stirring slowly, as though afraid the food itself might judge her. From outside came laughter, children's laughter, and her heart tightened. She stepped to the window and peered out. There, near Adah's bright stall, her own 2 children were eating, their mouths glistening with soup, their faces full of delight. Even her husband, Papa Uche, sat beside them, wiping his mouth, smiling. The same man who had once said her cooking tasted like the warmth of home now praised another woman's pot. Her hands began to shake harder. The ladle slipped, splashing stew onto the fire. It hissed, sending up a sharp scent of burnt yam and palm oil. The smell filled the hut, bitter and heavy. She closed her eyes, holding her chest as anger and shame battled within her. "Her pots never run dry," she whispered under her breath. "Who cooks for dawn before dawn wakes up?" Her voice cracked, and tears she didn't want fell down her cheeks. From outside, her friend Ngozi called softly, "Uche, come eat with us in the evening." But Mama Uche didn't answer. She turned away from the window, staring at the pot like it was a mirror to her misery. Later that night, Ngozi came by, carrying a small calabash of soup. The lamplight flickered as she stepped inside, revealing Mama Uche seated on the floor, her face drawn and her eyes dull. "You didn't come," Ngozi said gently, setting the calabash down. "The market women asked for you." Mama Uche forced a smile that never reached her eyes. "I had no appetite," she murmured. Ngozi sighed and sat beside her. "Uche, I know your heart. Don't let envy eat you. Maybe Adah's gift is simply a blessing from above." Mama Uche's head snapped up, bitterness flashing in her eyes. "A blessing?" she said sharply. "Then tell me, my friend who blesses a woman to rise before dawn and cook for a crowd that never leaves her hungry? Who blesses her hands so her pots are never empty, even when her basket is bare?" Ngozi looked uneasy. Perhaps her mother taught her secrets we don't know. But Mama Uche's voice grew low, trembling with emotion. "Or maybe," she whispered, "she cooks with something darker." The words hung heavy in the air like thunder waiting to break. Ngozi touched her arm softly. "Don't say such things. The tongue is a drum, it can wake spirits best left sleeping." Mama Uche turned her face away, silent again. When Ngozi left, the hut felt colder. The lamp flickered weakly, casting long shadows on the walls. The smell of burnt stew lingered, mixing with the night's damp air. Crickets sang their restless chorus, as if echoing her frustration. She sat by the pot again, running her fingers along its rim. "What power does she have that I don't?" she muttered. "I rise before the rooster. I season with care. I pray before I cook. Yet my food tastes ordinary, while hers brings people to tears. What spirit stirs her spoon?" Her words grew louder until she shouted them at the walls. But the only answer was the pop of firewood and the hum of insects. Her heart began to twist with something more dangerous than jealousy. She no longer wanted to match Adah. She needed to understand her. Her mind replayed every glance, every rumor, every strange word Adah had ever spoken. She remembered how Adah's stall always smelled of something unfamiliar, not just pepper and spice, but something deeper, something that made the hair on her neck stand. And she remembered that once, long ago, when she visited Adah's home unannounced, she had seen a clay pot, half buried by the forest edge, a pot Adah never spoke of. That memory clung to her like a curse. She rose suddenly, pacing. "If I don't find her secret," she whispered, "I'll lose everything." Her hands clenched around her wrapper. "Even the gods will forget me." Outside, the night deepened. The moon climbed high, pale and watchful. The wind brushed against the thatched roof, carrying faint echoes of the marketplace's distant laughter, the clatter of empty bowls. She blew out the lamp, sitting in darkness, her thoughts spinning like restless bats. Through the small window, she could see the faint glow of Adah's hut far away. A shadow moved there slowly, deliberately, as though tending to a fire that never slept. The light flickered, then steadied again. Mama Uche's breath quickened. "She's cooking," she murmured. "At this hour?" "For who?" The question clawed at her heart. Every instinct told her to stay home, to pray, to sleep. But another quiet, sharp and dangerous voice whispered, "Go, see for yourself." She wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders and stepped outside. The air was cool and heavy, thick with the smell of night flowers and smoke. Each step crunched softly on the red earth. She walked past the sleeping stools, past the well, past the mango tree that swayed like it knew her secret. The crickets stopped singing as she neared the forest path. There, through the trees, she saw clearly the glow of Adah's fire. It pulsed like a heartbeat, bright and alive. Mama Uche crouched low, her own heart pounding. She whispered to herself, "If I find what I think I will, then the village will know what kind of magic feeds them." Her eyes hardened. Let her be the healer by day. I will uncover what she becomes by night. And so that night the path of jealousy became the road to revelation. For when a heart feeds on envy, it forgets the taste of peace. And when the moon hides behind clouds, it is not the darkness that blinds it, is the hunger to see what should remain unseen. In those days, peace was like morning dew, soft, fragile, and easily broken. The market bustled with color, laughter, and the clatter of coins, but beneath that noise envy began to whisper. Adah's food stall had become the pride of the village. Her stews healed the sick, her soups comforted the broken, and travelers from distant lands came just to taste her magic pot. The elders blessed her, the women praised her, and the men bowed their heads when she passed. But where praise grows too wild, jealousy always plants its roots. And in the shadow of Adah's rising glory stood one woman whose light had begun to fade. Mama Uche was once the market's heart, known for its spicy yam porridge that could melt sorrow itself. Her laughter could chase away a storm, and her stall was the gathering place for stories and songs. But as Adah's fame rose, her customers drifted away like smoke in the wind. Day after day, she watched people walk past her pots to Adah's, their coins clinking into another woman's bowl. Her smile weakened. Her song stopped. The joy in her hands turned to trembling. "What charm does she use?" she would mutter. No one cooks like that without help from something unseen, and when a heart speaks such words often enough, they begin to take shape in the dark. One afternoon, the two women met at the well. The sun was high, and its heat pressed heavily upon the earth. Adah greeted her warmly, her smile gentle as ever. "Sister Uche, how are your sales today?" she asked. Mama Uche's eyes darted away. "Slow," she replied coldly. "Not everyone needs to add magic to their food to sell it." Adah paused, her hands stilling on the rope. "Magic?" she said softly. "I cook only with what my mother taught me." Mama Uche's voice trembled with bitterness. "Then your mother must have learned from spirits." The words hung in the air like flies over a wound. Adah looked at her long, her smile fading, and in that silence something invisible shifted between them, a thread of resentment woven tight. "Be careful with your tongue, Mama Uche," Adah said finally. "Words have legs. They can walk back to you." She lifted her bucket and walked away, her shadow long and sharp beneath the sun. That night, the village dogs barked endlessly. The moon hid behind clouds, and strange winds swept through the banana leaves. Inside her hut, Mama Uche sat by her cold pot, her face lit only by the faint glow of a dying lamp. The hunger of her bitterness had grown into something fierce. She whispered to herself, "She thinks she can warn me. Let her taste her own fire." She rose, took a small gourd filled with palm oil, and stepped outside. Her feet moved as though guided by anger itself. Under the mango tree, she poured the oil into the dirt and muttered the words an old woman once told her. Long ago, words meant to call balance from envy, but which the wrong heart can twist into poison. The earth shivered beneath her feet. The wind stilled. Then she heard laughter, soft, distant, and not her own. Frightened, she dropped the gourd and ran inside. But that night, she dreamed of a dark pot boiling without fire, and something inside it calling her name. The next morning, Mama Uche's body refused to rise. Her eyes opened but saw nothing. Her voice tried to speak, but no sound came. Papa Uche called for help, and the neighbors came running. They found her shaking, sweat pouring from her body, her lips whispering strange words. "Fire the fire, it burns from inside," she gasped. The healer came, chanting prayers and sprinkling herbs, but her fever only grew. Adah, hearing the commotion, came rushing too. "Let me help," she said, kneeling beside the bed. But Mama Uche turned her face away, her eyes wide with terror. "Don't touch me!" she screamed weakly. "Witch, you did this!" Her voice cracked like broken clay. The room fell silent. Adah froze, hurt flashing across her face. She stood slowly, eyes glistening. "You curse yourself with your own bitterness," she whispered, and left the hut without another word. By nightfall, Mama Uche's cries turned to whispers, and her whispers turned to silence. When the last breath left her body, the lamp in her hut flickered out on its own. Outside, thunder rolled through the sky was clear. Papa Uche fell to his knees, weeping. The women wailed into the wind, their voices echoing through the sleeping village. Some said it was a fever. Others said it was guilt. But those who had been near her hut swore they smelled something strange, the scent of Adah's stew floating faintly through the night air. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. People gathered in groups, whispering, "Did you hear? Mama Uche is gone. They quarreled just days ago. She called Adah a witch, and now she's dead." Fear walked openly through the marketplace that day. Even Adah's stall, once the center of joy, stood deserted. Her pots boiled alone as she stared at the empty space before her. She stirred the soup slowly, her face calm but her eyes dark with thought. "Let them speak," she murmured to herself. "The truth will cook itself in time." But as she lifted the spoon to taste her broth, the wind blew through her stall, snuffing out her fire. The soup turned cold without warning, and from deep within the pot a faint sound rose, not bubbling but whispering. Adah dropped the spoon. Her hand trembled. Somewhere far off a crow cawed 3 times, and the air grew heavy with omen. That night, thunder finally broke, and the rain came hard, washing through the market, flooding the paths, beating on rooftops like drums of mourning. In the morning, when the storm had passed, a red flower lay at the foot of Mama Uche's grave, though none had planted it. And in Adah's stall, that same flower appeared beside her pot, its petals wet, its scent strange and sharp. Adah stared at it in silence. Then she smiled faintly and whispered, "So, you came to watch?" The rainwater hissed as it touched the fire, and the pot began to bubble again, though no one had lit it. And that was the beginning. My children, the moment when jealousy became cursed, and death became a doorway. The morning after Mama Uche's passing came heavy with silence. The sun rose weakly, as though ashamed to shine upon the sorrow that covered the village. Smoke curled from kitchen fires, but no one stirred a pot. The market square stood still, its laughter swallowed by grief. Mama Uche's body lay inside her hut, covered in white cloth, her hands folded over her chest. Her neighbors gathered around her, their faces washed with tears. The old women wailed softly, their cries rising and falling like waves against a shore that would never see light again. Children peered through doorways, frightened by a death they could not yet understand. Papa Uche sat near the bed, his eyes hollow, his lips trembling around the same name, Uche, my Uche, as though repetition might breathe her back to life. But the dead, my children, do not answer those who wait too long to listen. By mid-morning the elders came with their staff to perform the burial rites. The drums of mourning began, slow and steady, echoing through the hills. A long procession followed the coffin to the mango tree behind her home, where the grave had been dug. The earth there was soft, dark, and damp, ready to receive what once lived and laughed among them. As the men lowered her down, the women sang the song of farewell, a song older than the soil itself. Sleep well, daughter of the morning. Rest beneath the tree of truth. Dust fell like rain as each handful of earth covered her, and when the final layer sealed her away, Adah stepped forward. She wore a black shawl, her face hidden, her movements graceful but strange. In her hand she held a single red flower, bright as blood, fragrant as deceit. She placed it gently on the mound, and for a moment all sound died. Then a cold wind swept through the mourners, raising goosebumps on their skin. Some crossed themselves, others turned their eyes away. They did not know what it meant, but their souls whispered warnings their mouths could not speak. The oldest woman among them muttered, "When a flower blooms at a grave, beware its root." That evening the village did not cook. Fires burned low, and even the crickets seemed to mourn. But in the quiet corners of homes, whispers began to grow. Some said Mama Uche had died of heartbreak. Others said of envy, yet a few lowered their voices to say her death was no accident. They spoke of Adah's strange flower, of her calmness at the grave, and of the way the air turned cold in her presence. Fear began to crawl through the village like smoke under a door. No one spoke openly, but everyone watched. Night came quickly, draping the village in mist. Ngozi, Mama Uche's closest friend, could not sleep. She lay awake, her thoughts restless, her heart heavy. The sound of the wind outside her hut carried a rhythm, a slow, mournful hum that reminded her of her friend's laughter. When the sound grew louder, she sat up and lit a small oil lamp. Its flame trembled, though the air was still. The shadows on the wall seemed to breathe. She whispered to herself, "It is only the night, only at night." But then came another sound, faint, soft, like someone calling her name. "Ngozi, Ngozi." The voice was weak but familiar. She froze. "Who is there?" she asked, her voice barely a breath. The wind answered by pushing open her door, and the lamp flickered wildly. There, in the corner of the room, the air thickened, and a shape began to form, a figure pale and trembling, eyes wide with sorrow. It was Mama Uche, or what remained of her. "Ngozi," the voice said again, trembling like leaves in a storm. "They buried my body, but not my pain. The earth cannot silence the truth." Ngozi fell to her knees, her heart pounding, her skin cold as rain. "My friend, what binds your spirit?" she whispered. The ghost's lips parted, but before words came, the wind howled, scattering ashes from the lamp. The flame died, plunging the room into darkness. And then, as suddenly as it had come, the presence was gone. Only a faint smell lingered, the same sweet and strange scent, that had filled Adah's stall. On the floor near the lamp lay a single red petal. Ngozi stared at it, her breath caught between fear and understanding. She knew then that Mama Uche's death was not the end, but a beginning. At dawn, Ngozi went to Papa Uche. He sat outside, his eyes swollen and distant. When she told him what she had seen, he shook his head. "It was a dream," he said hoarsely. "Grief tricks the heart." But Ngozi leaned closer. "No, brother." The dead spoke. "Your wife seeks justice." He looked away, trembling. "Dada came to comfort me yesterday," he confessed quietly. "She brought me stew. I ate it." Ngozi's stomach turned. "You ate her food again?" "After what happened?" He nodded weakly. "I could not refuse. Something in her voice pulls me." Ngozi stepped back, her voice sharp with horror. "Her voice binds you because it is not her own. It is borrowed from the spirits she feeds." Papa Uche covered his ears, shaking. "Stop it, Ngozi, enough." But she stood firm. "You cannot hide from the truth. The grave may hold the body, but the spirit still walks." That night the dogs barked without rest. People swore they heard footsteps near the mango tree, and some said they saw a woman in white walking between the shadows. Ngozi stood at her window, clutching her Bible, staring into the dark. She whispered, "My friend, I have heard your cry. I will not let your death be buried in silence." The wind stilled, and a soft voice answered, faint but clear. "Then be ready, Ngozi. The truth hungers." The lamp flame flickered once and steadied, and in that small circle of light, Ngozi felt the courage of something greater than fear rising inside her chest. When morning came, the village awoke uneasy. Chickens refused to crow, and the sky stayed grey even after the sun rose. The mango tree behind Mama Uche's home swayed, though no wind moved it. Beneath its roots a secret waited, restless, unseen, and whispering for justice. The living would soon learn that when envy births death, and death births silence, the grave itself must speak. And it had chosen Ngozi as its voice. The sun rose heavy with secrets, its warmth unable to melt the chill that lingered after Mama Uche's burial. In the marketplace, laughter sounded forced, and every pot that boiled seemed to whisper the same name, Adah. But the people turned away from the whispers, pretending not to hear what their hearts already feared. Only one woman refused to stay silent, Ngozi, Mama Uche's dearest friend. Her nights were haunted by dreams of her friend's pale face, her mouth moving soundlessly, her eyes begging for truth. Each dawn, Ngozi woke drenched in sweat, the echo of that ghostly plea lingering in her ears. She knew now that Mama Uche's spirit would not rest, and neither would she. For days Ngozi watched Adah from afar. She observed her quiet grace, her calm smile, her effortless success. There was no sign of guilt, no crack in her serenity. Each morning, Adah's stall drew crowds as always, men, women, and even the chief's guards lined up for her meals. She served them with gentleness, as though feeding her own children. Yet Ngozi could not forget that night's whisper, "The dead speak when the living pretend not to hear." So she decided to listen. One afternoon, when the market thinned and the sun hung low, Ngozi approached Adah's stall. The smell of stew filled the air, rich, thick, and strangely comforting. Adah greeted her with that same soft smile. "Ah, Sister Ngozi," she said, her voice smooth as melted butter. "You have not visited my stall in some time. Come eat and be filled." But Ngozi's heart was hard. She looked straight into Adah's calm eyes and replied, "Not all food satisfies, Adah. Some fill the belly and empty the soul." Adah's smile faltered for a moment, but only for a breath. Then she laughed lightly. "Careful, my sister. Hunger makes people imagine things." Ngozi said nothing more. She turned and walked away. But in her chest burned a promise she would uncover whatever darkness lay behind that woman's smile. That night, as the moon floated above the palm trees, Ngozi traveled to a neighboring village to seek the wisdom of an old native doctor, known for seeing what others could not. The old man's hut smelled of herbs and ancient smoke. He listened quietly as Ngozi told her the jealous friend's death, the cursed silence, the laughter that lingered after the grave. When she finished, the old man's eyes glowed with concern. "Ngozi," he said, "you walk in dangerous waters. Adah is not of ordinary blood. Her fire is fed by spirits that eat both flesh and memory." Ngozi shivered but did not look away. "Then tell me how to face her," she said firmly. The old man nodded, reaching for a small leather pouch. He placed it in her hands. "This charm will shield you from her eyes. It carries the strength of those who sleep beneath the earth. Wear it close to your heart. But listen carefully. Do not confront her until you have proof. If she knows you are watching, she will strike like lightning." Ngozi bowed deeply, her heart a mix of fear and determination. "Thank you, Baba," she whispered. "For Mama Uche's sake, I will not turn back." That same night, Ngozi hid near the marketplace as the others packed up their stalls. She waited in the shadows, watching Adah close her pots and tie her wrappers. The moon cast silver light across the empty market. When the last trader left, Adah lifted her basket and began her walk down the narrow path toward the forest. Ngozi followed quietly, her heart beating like a drum in her ears. The charm the old man gave her felt warm against her chest, pulsing with each step she took. They walked for a long while, deeper and deeper into the darkness until Adah finally stopped near a clearing lit by fireflies. There she knelt beside a small mound of earth and began to whisper words that twisted through the air like snakes. Ngozi crouched low behind a bush, her breath shallow. Suddenly Adah struck her palm against the ground 3 times. The earth trembled and then, before Ngozi's horrified eyes, the soil parted. A lifeless body rose slowly from beneath the ground. Adah's face glowed with strange reverence as she began to cut pieces of flesh, wrapping them neatly in plantain leaves. Ngozi's whole body froze. Her mind screamed, but her mouth could not. She watched in disbelief as Adah's knife gleamed under the moon, slicing with devotion, as though preparing a sacred meal. Then Adah lifted her head and whispered softly to the night, "The living must eat. The dead must serve. The balance must remain." Ngozi's stomach turned. Her hands trembled so violently that the leaves beneath her feet rustled. Adah stopped. For a heartbeat, silence ruled the forest. Then slowly Adah turned her head, her eyes scanning the darkness. Ngozi held her breath, pressing the charm tightly against her heart. After a long moment, Adah smiled faintly and returned to her task, convinced she was alone. Ngozi took that moment to slip away, crawling backward until she reached the path. When she was far enough, she rose and ran, her feet barely touching the ground, her breath catching in her chest. By the time she reached her hut, dawn was breaking. She fell to her knees, trembling and gasping, tears of fear and relief streaming down her face. "Oh, Mama Uche," she whispered to the air, "your death was not in vain. I have seen the evil that walks in daylight." She swore then that she would bring the truth to the village, no matter the cost. But as the sun climbed higher and the market awoke once again to Adah's sweet aroma, a shadow of doubt crept into her mind. Would anyone believe her? The same people who praised Adah's food now worshipped her name. And still, as she stood at her window watching the smoke rise from Adah's stall, Ngozi felt something stir in the wind, something cold and familiar. A whisper brushed her ear, soft as breath. "Be careful, Ngozi. The truth feeds on the brave." She closed her eyes, gripping the charm tightly, her voice steady but low. "Then let the brave feed the truth." The morning after Ngozi's dreadful discovery, the village breathed as if nothing had happened. Smoke rose from cooking fires, children chased chickens across the red dust, and the traders shouted their prices with tired cheer. Yet for Ngozi every sound was hollow. She alone carried the weight of what she had seen the earth opening, the lifeless body, Adah's calm hands carving death into supper. Each time the aroma of stew drifted from the market, her stomach knotted, her heart trembled. The world seemed bewitched by blindness. Even those who feared Adah's power still lined up at her stall, mouths watering, coins ready. Fear had become hunger's servant. But inside Ngozi's chest, another fire began to grow, small but stubborn faith. For days she prayed, kneeling before her wooden cross, her Bible open beside the charm the old man had given her. "Spirits of truth," she whispered, "give me strength to break this darkness." Yet her nights were still haunted. In dreams she saw Mama Uche's face, half in light, half in shadow, whispering words Ngozi could not hear. One evening, as she prayed beneath the flickering lamp, a sudden gust blew through her hut, though the door was closed. The lamp sputtered. The flame bent backward, then straightened, shining brighter than before. A voice clear and gentle spoke from the quiet, "Ngozi, do not tremble. The Lord of Light stands with you. The time has come to expose the hidden pot." She lifted her head, her tears reflecting the flame. For the first time since Mama Uche's death, her fear loosened its claws. She knew then what she must do. That night she prepared. She bound the charm around her neck and placed her Bible against her chest. Outside, the wind murmured through the palms like distant drums. The moon climbed high, pale and watchful. Ngozi stepped into the darkness, her feet silent on the earth. Each step was a prayer. Each breath carried the name of her friend. The path to Adah's hut wound through tall grass and sleeping trees. Strange noises stirred in the bush rustles that could have been leaves or voices, but Ngozi did not stop. Faith does not ask the road to be quiet. It asks the heart to keep walking. At last she saw a faint red glow pulsing ahead. Adah's hut stood alone in the clearing, smoke coiling from a fire that never seemed to die. Through the window, the shadows of her arms moved rhythmically, stirring, cutting, stirring again. Ngozi crept closer, pressing her face to the bamboo wall. What she saw turned her blood cold. The pot on the fire was not filled with yam or goat meat, but with what she now recognized as two well flesh, pale and sinking, eyes closed as if still dreaming. Adah hummed softly, a melody older than mercy. Ngozi's hand trembled as she reached for her phone, the small device shining like a shard of modern light in the ancient dark. She began to record her breath shallow. Each frame captured what the world refused to see, the truth simmering in Adah's pot. When she was sure she had enough, she stepped back and lifted her voice. "Adah," she called, her tone steady though her heart thundered. "The darkness ends tonight." Adah turned sharply, her eyes catching the firelight glowing like coals. For the first time, her calm smile cracked. "You again," she hissed. "Did I not warn you, Ngozi? Curiosity fed your friend to silence. Must it feed you too?" Ngozi raised the Bible high. "Your power ends where truth begins. You cook with death, and the living will no longer eat from your pot." Adah's laugh split the night. "You think that book can save you? I have walked with spirits before your mother's mother was born." The fire roared. Wind circled the hut, lifting ashes into the air. "Then let the spirits choose," Ngozi said. "Faith or fear one must fall." Lightning cracked without rain. The ground trembled as Adah began to chant, words too ancient for human tongues. Shadows gathered around her, twisting into forms that clawed at the air. Ngozi felt the cold press against her skin, the charm on her chest growing hot. She opened the Bible and began to read aloud, her voice strong. The verses rolling like thunder. "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the powers of darkness in the hidden places." Light spilled from the pages, golden and fierce. The spirits recoiled, shrieking. Adah screamed, throwing handfuls of powder into the air, but the light grew brighter. "Stop!" she cried. "You know not what you challenge." Ngozi took a step forward. "I challenge evil wherever it hides its face." The clash of light and shadow filled the clearing. The trees bent. The fire blazed white. Adah staggered, her magic faltering. She reached for the pot as if to draw strength from it, but the contents boiled over, spilling dark liquid onto the ground. The smell of rot filled the air. Ngozi's voice rose above the storm. "The Lord is my strength and my shield." A final gust exploded from the hut, scattering sparks into the night. When the light faded, Adah lay on the ground, trembling, her once proud eyes now wide with terror. Ngozi stood over her, breath ragged but spirit unbroken. She whispered, "Faith has no fear." Adah's lips quivered. "How did you—" But the words died in her throat. Ngozi lowered the Bible slowly. "Because light does not argue with darkness. It simply shines." She picked up her phone from the ground, still recording, and pointed it toward the fallen woman. "Your own deeds will speak now." Adah looked away, her strength draining like smoke in the wind. The forest grew silent, the fire shrinking to embers. Ngozi turned toward the path back to the village. Her knees shook, but her heart was steady. Behind her, Adah moaned softly, defeated. The night no longer felt heavy. The air smelled clean, washed by faith. As Ngozi walked, she heard the faintest whisper from the trees, a voice that sounded like Mama Uche's, gentle and free. "Well done, my friend. You have broken the pot." Ngozi smiled through her tears. "No," she whispered back, "faith broke it. I only carried the flame." And so the woman who had faced darkness with nothing but courage and prayer walked toward the first light of dawn, the proof of evil glowing in her hands and the promise of justice burning in her heart. The drums of fear were silent at last, replaced by the steady beat of faith-soft, sure, eternal. When dawn finally broke, the village woke to whispers. Some said they had seen flashes of light above the forest. Others swore the earth had trembled. But Ngozi returned before the cock crowed twice, her wrapper torn, her face streaked with ash and sweat. In her hand she carried a small phone, the screen glowing faintly with the proof that would change everything. She stood at the market square where traders were still setting up their stalls, and called out, "People of my village, come and see what your hunger has blinded you to." Her voice shook, but did not break. The villagers gathered, curious, half afraid. Ada's stall stood empty, the fire cold for the first time in years. Ghazi held the phone high. The crowd leaned close, their murmurs rising as they saw the recording, the open grave, the dead flesh. Ada's hands stirring what no human should cook. Gasps turned to cries, and cries turned to anger. Mothers covered their children's eyes. Men crossed themselves and spat into the dust. "She fed us with death." Someone shouted, "The gods will punish her." Another cried. But Ngozi raised her hand. "Do not curse her yet. The law will judge what the spirit has already condemned." Before long the chief's guards arrived. They took Ngozi to the palace, where the king sat beneath his umbrella of cowrie shells, frowning deeply. She bowed low and spoke. "Your Majesty, I bring truth, not tales. The woman called Adah has fed this village with the flesh of the dead." The king's face hardened. "You accuse a woman loved by all? Where is your proof?" Without a word, she placed the phone before him. As the recording played, silence filled the hall. When it ended, the king's hands trembled. "Summon her," he said softly. "Bring Adah before me." The guards found her at her hut, kneeling by the ashes of her dead fire. She did not resist. Her eyes were calm again, almost empty, as if some part of her had already left the world. When they brought her to the palace, she looked around at the fearful faces and smiled faintly. "So," she murmured, "the feast is over." The king rose, his voice sharp. "Adah, you have used the trust of your people for evil. You will answer both man and spirit." She tilted her head, eyes glimmering like water before a storm. "Evil?" she said. "What is evil, my king? When you feasted on my stew, did you not praise me? When I filled your bellies, did you not bless my name? The world eats what it needs to survive." A murmur spread through the hall, but Ngozi stepped forward. "Survival does not drink from graves, Adah. You chose darkness, and darkness will now claim you." For the first time, Adah's calm cracked. "And you," she hissed, "chose the light. But tell me, Ngozi, how long can you stand it before it burns you?" Her voice rose, and the air grew cold. The lamps flickered, though there was no wind. The guards drew back, fear crawling up their spines. Ngozi gripped her Bible and spoke evenly. "The same light that reveals also purifies. It is not I who stands against you, Adahit is the truth." Then something strange happened. The sky outside darkened, clouds gathering like black smoke. Thunder rolled, shaking the roof. Adah lifted her hands, and a gust of wind burst through the open doors, scattering palm leaves and dust. The crowd screamed. The king stumbled back. "She's calling her spirits," someone shouted. Adah's laughter filled the hall, echoing like the cry of 100 voices. "Did you think the darkness would go quietly?" she said. "I fed this village. I gave it life. Now I will take it back." But Ngozi did not move. She stepped closer, holding the Bible to her chest, and her voice rose above the chaos. "Adah, your time is finished. Your power ends today." She began to pray, her words steady, each verse striking the air like a drumbeat. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" The storm raged harder. Adah screamed, her hair whipping around her face, her eyes blazing. She hurled her curse, "Let her tongue rot, let her bones break." But the words dissolved before they reached Ngozi. The light from the Bible flared, flooding the hall in golden brightness. Adah fell to her knees, covering her face. "It burns," she cried. "It burns." Ngozi knelt too, not in defeat but in prayer, her voice calm amid the roaring wind. "You fed on death and called it power, but death cannot rule the living when faith still breathes." A final bolt of lightning split the clouds, striking just beyond the palace wall. The ground shook, and then all went still. The light faded, the wind ceased, and only the soft sound of rain remained. Adah lay motionless, her eyes open but unseeing. A thin line of smoke rose from her hands. When it was over, the king descended from his seat and looked at Ngozi. His voice trembled. "You have saved us from what we refuse to see. From this day forward, the market will feed only the living." He turned to the guards. "Take her away. Let her answer to justice." They carried Adah out, limp and silent, her face pale against the grey dawn. As the rain washed the dust from the earth, the people gathered around Ngozi. Some wept. Others knelt to thank her, but she only shook her head. "Do not thank me," she said softly. "Thank the one who gives light to see through darkness. I merely walked where faith led." That night, peace returned to the village for the first time in many moons. The fires in the market burned clean. The air smelled of yam and spice, not of sorrow. Yet when Ngozi closed her eyes, she saw Mama Uche smiling free at last, her voice carried on the wind. "You have done well, my friend," the spirit seemed to say. "The pot of fear is broken," Ngozi whispered back, "and may it never boil again. So ends the tale of faith and fear. Remember, my children, when light confronts darkness, the shadows scream, but they cannot stay. For the heart that walks with truth may tremble, yet it will never fall." The storm had passed, but its memory lingered like smoke after fire. The village that once trembled before Adah's name now stood in quiet disbelief. For many days, people spoke in hushed tones, afraid that even their words might awaken what had been buried. Adah was taken by the guards, locked behind the cold iron bars of the town prison. Her stall stood empty in the market square, her pots rusting in silence. The air smelled clean again, yet beneath that freshness lay something heavier, the weight of truth finally uncovered. In the early mornings, when the mist still hugged the earth, the market women would gather and whisper, "How could we have eaten from her hand and not known?" And the elders, their faces lined with shame, would answer, "Because hunger blinds faster than darkness." People began to wash their utensils with herbs, burn incense at their doorways, and sprinkle salt at the market crossroads. They said it would cleanse what remained of Adah's evil, but in truth they were trying to wash away their own guilt. As for Ngozi, the days that followed were quiet but heavy. The village hailed her as the woman who had saved them, the one whose faith broke the spell that had bound their hearts. Yet she felt no triumph in her chest. Her spirit was weary, her thoughts full of echoes of the cries of Mama Uche, the curses of Adah, the thunder that had split the sky. Victory, she realized, does not come without scars. Sometimes light burns before it heals. One afternoon, as she sat beneath the mango tree in the same place where her friend lay sleeping, a shadow fell across her feet. She looked up and saw Papa Uche, thinner now, his eyes sunken but clear of the cloud that had once veiled them. He bowed low. "Ngozi," he said softly, "I have come to ask forgiveness. When my wife was alive, I was blind. I thought Adah's food was comforting, but it was poisonous and perfume. You tried to warn me, yet I laughed." Ngozi shook her head gently. "Forgiveness is not mine to give," she replied. "It belongs to the spirit of the one who suffered." Papa Uche knelt beside the grave and placed his palm on the earth. "Uche," he whispered, "I was a fool. May your soul find peace now that the truth has come to light." The mango leaves rustled, though no wind blew, and both he and Ngozi felt that soft stirring that speaks louder than words. A sign, perhaps, that the dead had finally been heard. That night the king summoned Ngozi to his palace. The hall glowed with torchlight, and the drums beat slowly, not in warning but in respect. When she entered, the people rose. The king stood, his robe bright as morning sun. "Ngozi," he began, "you have done what no warrior could. You fought darkness not with a sword, but with the power of faith. You saved your people when even their eyes refused to see. From this day you shall serve as my advisor, the keeper of wisdom and truth in this land." The hall erupted in cheers, but Ngozi bowed her head humbly. "Your Majesty," she said, "I did not fight for honor or title. I fought for peace, for the soul of a friend." The king smiled, nodding. "Then you shall carry both." And so it was that Ngozi, once a simple market woman, became the village's voice of conscience, the one whose courage turned sorrow into strength. 2 days later, word came from the prison Adah was dead. The guards had found her lifeless at dawn, her eyes open, her lips curved in what looked like a faint smile. No wound marked her body, yet her skin was cold as stone. Some said her own darkness had devoured her. Others whispered that the spirits she had served had finally come to claim their debt. Whatever the truth, no one mourned her loudly. The market women burned incense again, and the villagers spoke her name only in warning a story to teach their children that even the sweetest food may hide bitter roots. As time passed, peace returned. The laughter of children filled the marketplace again, and the aroma of clean cooking rose into the morning air. But the people never forgot. Before each feast they would pray first, saying, "May this meal feed only the living." And whenever thunder rolled across the sky, they would lower their voices and remember the day when a woman's faith silenced fear itself. Ngozi lived quietly, tending her garden, visiting the sick, and teaching the young that strength is not in power but in purity of heart. Sometimes she would pause by Mama Uche's grave, whispering softly, "My sister, your pain gave birth to truth. Rest now." And sometimes, when the wind blew through the mango leaves, she would hear a faint laugh warm free, like the sound of forgiveness. Years later, people still told the story of Adah, the woman whose food fed both the living and the dead, and of Ngozi, who faced darkness with the flame of faith. The elders would gather the children around the fire and end with the same words, the ones the storyteller's voice now speaks. "Remember, my children envy cooks trouble, and pride serves it hot. But faith, our faith is the water that cools the tongue of fear. The heart that walks with truth may stumble, but it will never stay down. And when the night grows long, remember Ngozi, the woman who carried light through the valley of shadows." Thus ends the tale of the Dark Feast of Adah. May we never again eat from the pot of deceit, but only from the bowl of truth, my children. Every story carries a seed. Some seeds grow into laughter, others into lessons that never die. Tonight, we ate from the bowl of truth, bitter at first, but sweet in the end. They said Adah's food could heal the sick, but no one asked what she was really cooking. And isn't that how the world works sometimes? We praise what pleases us and forget to question what feeds us. We trust the hand that gives without seeing the shadow that follows it. But truth, it has a way of rising, just like smoke from a dying fire. You may cover it with ashes, you may bury it deep, but the wind will always find it. Mama Uche's spirit whispered, because silence had swallowed her cry, and Ngozi listened when others turned away. That is what faith is, my children, not the absence of fear, but the courage to walk through it with light in your hand. When the heart chooses faith, darkness loses its teeth. Even the mightiest curse crumbles before a single prayer born of love. For the gods may test us with storms, but they never abandon the one who stands for truth. So remember this: a kind face can hide a cruel heart, and a sweet meal can hide the taste of death. But faith cleanses every tongue, every soul that dares to speak against deceit. When you hear a whisper in your spirit telling you, "This is wrong," do not silence it. That whisper may be an ancestor, or a piece of truth trying to save your path. And if ever you find yourself walking through a night of fear, hold your faith as Ngozi held hers, not as a weapon, but as a light, because the light does not argue with darkness, it simply shines, and the darkness remembers its place. My children, let your faith be stronger than your fear. Let your truth speak louder than your hunger. And when the world offers you a sweet taste, remember this story and ask first, what is really cooking beneath the pot? This was the Dark Feast of Adah, a tale to remind us that evil can wear a smile, and faith can wear simple clothes, but both reveal themselves when the fire burns hot enough.